Hello and welcome to my channel. I've been on eBay again and I managed to find this kit quite cheap. It's missing the box, but as far as I can tell it's got all the plastic parts and that's the most important thing. So we'll have a quick look at the instructions and see what it's all about. Not only does it include Wallace and Gromit, but it also includes a rabbit and a van to scale. So there's quite a lot of plastic involved, and we're talking about at least half a shelf when it comes to displaying it. Well, the instructions seem fairly straightforward. The back cover also lets you know where all the decals go. Speaking of which, we do have the decal sheets. They are very old, so I don't know how well they're going to work, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. These are the paint, brush and glue that came with it. These are unfortunately not the right colours for this kit. I believe these belong to the motorcycle and sidecar. Plus there's no fresh colour for Wallace and Gromit. Speaking of which, I'm going to start off with Wallace and Gromit, which means nipping the parts from the sprue, and of course tidying them up, in which case I'm using a tiny file. There are quite a lot of obvious seam lines to get rid of too. It's not essential, but some parts are able to rotate, such as Wallace's head and left hand. We just need to make sure we don't glue those areas, but the areas that do need gluing are the pegs and the slots. In my personal experience, the older Airfix kits tend to need a lot of brute force to join together. As you might be able to tell, some of the areas just aren't lining up properly. So it looks like I'm going to need the assistance of some clamps. Once the glue is set, the clamp can be removed. Despite doing a decent job, there's still some gaps which are showing. There are also some overlaps which can be filed down, and this filler with a narrow nozzle is ideal for filling in the gaps. That's going to take a while to set, so I'm going to move on to the trousers. These are nice and simple and consist of only 4 parts. I'm not going to fully assemble everything at this stage. Some things are still easier to paint when only partly assembled. The filler is now dried, so that can be filed down. I also put into place Wallace's right hand. That will be glued in after painting. As you can see, I'm also assembling Gromit. He's going to be mostly one solid piece. Like with Wallace, I'm leaving his cap off for now, so it's easier to paint. And now I've just got his tails and arms to put in. His arms require a little bit of guesswork, as they've got ball sockets. Since he's going to be driving the van, I pushed out the steering wheel so I can get a rough idea of how wide his arms need to be. This may end up being wildly inaccurate, but at least the logic is sound. And the last item to assemble is the bunny rabbit. Since he's going to be painted pretty much a single colour, it makes sense for him to be fully assembled first. He's got quite a few small parts, eyes, legs, ears, etc. And he hangs in a dangling position, which is the way Wallace holds him in his right hand after being captured. He almost looks like a stuffed teddy bear when completed. It doesn't take long for the glue to set at all, then we can move on to the next phase, priming. So everything gets sprayed with this grey primer. Any obvious discrepancies can be lightly sanded away. If need be, you can always add another coat on top of this, and each layer will eventually build up and fill in the gaps. None of the paint that came with this kit were any use, so I had to colour match the best I could for my own collection. So I start off by painting some of the easy things like the caps, so they can be put to one side. Any fleshed areas will need a white base coat, otherwise you'll end up adding quite a few layers and have it looking gloopy, although you can clearly see that the white needs at least 2 coats. And while I'm at it, I also paint the dog and the rabbit, although that sounds like it could be the name of a pub. Wallace's bottom half is very straightforward. His trousers are blue, his turnips are light grey and his boots are black. Plus his belt buckle is silver. And that's another section completed. For Wallace I used a pale flesh. This required 2 or 3 coats. Plus I had to use a fine brush to paint around the teeth and the eyes. The eyeballs were raised up slightly, so it makes it easier when painting them black. Then it's just a matter of painting his uniform blue, then he's got a couple of light grey buttons. The rabbit is fairly straightforward. He has a pale pink nose and his body is painted in battleship grey. Then it's just a matter of painting around the eyeballs and teeth. No point painting an area twice if it can be avoided. As for Gromit, he's painted mostly in a buff colour, with the exception being light brown for his ears and black for his nose. And now I can move on to final assembly. I glue on Wallace's right hand and legs, and yes, I made sure you're wearing the right trousers. And that's followed by his extra long cap, which sits perfectly on his head. And lastly, the rabbit glued into his right hand. I know what you're thinking, if Wallace is now out of balance. Almost. He will remain upright, but don't knock him. For Gromit, he just needs his cap adding on, and he's finished. Now it's time for the boys to give us a wave. And if we're lucky, they'll give us a twirl too. I will say one thing about this kit, it's huge. So big in fact that it feels like I'm working with the original clay models. So that's the team complete. All I need now is a set of wheels. So let's get cracking on that van. The tyres are whitewashed, like you will find in the 1950s. So that part just needs painting, and it's probably best to add a couple of coats. Then it's just a matter of fitting them into the tyres. There are two slightly different designs. We have two with a long shaft at the back, and three with a short shaft. The short shaft go at the front and for the spare. As you can see, they're attached by a metal pin. This allows them to rotate, and then the chrome wheel trim can be popped into place. Next we've got to work on the exhaust, and this comes in two parts. It's also a good idea to paint this before we attach it, so I sprayed it silver. There are also a couple of other parts required, and it's a good idea to dry fit them first. This way you'll be able to work out what problems are likely to occur. It also helps you decide which order things should be glued down first. There's another piece to be added to the back which goes under the exhaust. So I'll set that into place and then glue everything down. The front section with the wheel can also be glued into place, and this is attached by 4 pegs. The underside of this van is very clean, but we can dirty it up, add oil and rust as we go along. The long metal rod is inserted by the wheel arches at the back, and this is where the wheel with the long shafts are inserted. We also can't forget those shiny wheel trims. Just like with the front, they simply pop into place, and you shouldn't require any glue. Next we're going to work on the dashboard, and I have a decal to apply. This has already acquired a tear because of its age, so I'll do my best to keep it intact and avoid any further damage. And once it's in place, I use a cotton bud to soak up any excess water. And now you can't see the tear at all. There are a few buttons on the dashboard and there's no colour guide for them, so I've decided to paint them silver. The interior of the vehicle will be dark once completed, so a lot of the details will go unnoticed. I went ahead and used some black panel liner to fill in the space between the buttons, and then used a cotton bud to clean up the buttons and reveal the silver again. The steering wheel and the column need gluing together, and these need painting black. Plus there are other additional fittings which need cutting out and painting, and they all have their places. Next I add on the steering column, which can only be faced upright. Now I can flip the base over and get to work on the inside. The foot pedals are held into place by a couple of brackets, but it's always better to reinforce them with glue. Next I push into place the gear stick. Thanks to the paint, this is now a tight fit. And then on the right hand side goes the handbrake. I went ahead and painted the driver and passenger seat in brown. To keep them aligned, they slot into some grooves on the floor. Next I slot into place the backboard, and this separates the boot from the cab. I try to make sure everything is aligned up perfectly for when I eventually apply the outer shell. The spare tire gets put in place at the back, and that's covered up by the bottom of the inside of the van. The dashboard is secured into place by a couple of pegs. This is a tight fit, which will also need a little bit of glue. Now we can move on to the outer shell of the vehicle. First off, the support pieces across the doors can be cut off. Once again, I don't have a colour guide for the next section, but for the trim around the windows and for the windscreen wipers, they're usually either in black or silver. I've chosen black, which is the more modern option. The flashing light on top is made out of hollow clay plastic, of which I painted it orange on the inside. And for those of you interested in electronics, you can also fit an LED light in here. Then I painted and installed the rear view mirror. The windscreen is oversized, which means I can be very generous with the glue when sticking it down. And I've chosen PVA because it's the least likely to fog up the plastic. Next, I stuck on the roof light. This is actually attached from the underside and pokes through. Now I have loads of little detail pieces to add on, including all the lights and the chrome trims. There's also an optional engine section to build. This allows the vehicle to be displayed with an automatic hand crank. And that's the front finish for now. Next I have the doors to assemble, and this includes adding the little catch and the large hinge. and of course to glue the window into place I use PVA glue again. Then that can be put to one side until it's fully cured. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and do the same for the back door. That way, when I need it, it's already done and ready for me. Now coming up is the most complicated part of the whole build. This is how you attach the door to the top hinge, which looks nice and simple, but when you try and connect the top and bottom halves of the van, nothing lined up. The technical term is, this requires a lot of jiggery pokery, which is a lot of pushing, pulling, twisting and turning until things slot into place. Just be thankful I've not included the full unedited version. Then I move on to adding the bits and pieces to the rear of the van. And as a bonus, the door will also open. And the last thing to actually assemble is the hand crank at the front. I just need to slot together all the interlocking links and then get it painted. Not only is this an optional display piece, but it can also be moved into whatever position you want. The above grille is on a hinge, so this can be closed. Now is scary time, applying old decals. These have a habit of tearing really easily, so I'll have to do my best to distribute the weight when sliding them off. As you can see, the larger one split in two. All is not lost though. It's just a matter of taking your time and sliding both parts about until they join, and then hopefully nobody will notice. It is also a good idea to dab off excess water with the cotton bud. This will help prevent any accidental slippage. I place the remaining decal without any issues, and just to represent real life, I place the tack disc on upside down. Now to add on the rust. All the rust spots have been pre-moulded, which is nice, and I use a dark chocolatey colour for the base. I also add additional rust spots on selective edges. These are kept fairly small as they tend to grow at different rates. Then I go over everything again, but this time with a watered down ginger colour. This represents an active rust spot. For the weathering, I'm going to water down these shoe polishers. I gave the whole thing 2 passes, the first in black and then the second in brown, as these represent 2 different types of dirt. Then using the tissue, I dab off most of the excess. This leaves behind little scuff marks, or the build up between the little cracks. The effect is quite subtle, but it all adds up. For the brown patch, I concentrate my efforts lower down, as this represents mud, and this helps to create a layered effect which we're going for. For the final stage, I'm going to add a few scratches, and this involves silver paint and a tiny brush, and these will form their own rust spots in time. Any area which is used to look like hinges is a great place to apply this. The other place is on the edges of a raised surface, as they'll catch bits of clothing as people walk past. Well, that's pretty much it. I'm going to call this done. I could spend a few more hours trying to perfect everything, or trying to get it screen accurate, or even adding weathering to the underside and the inside. But I could always do that at a later stage if I choose to. For now, this is good enough for my shelf. Even though there are a handful of problems, I quite enjoy building this kit, as it's not a very common kit to find on the market, as most tend to be of a serious subject matter and quite small. The only real downside comes with the instructions, especially with the colour guide. Without a colour photo reference, you do end up getting quite a lot. But in the end, we pretty much got it looking as intended. And that'll do for me. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.